On Tech News Today, China says the iPhone is a threat to national security. Amazon gets serious about package delivery by drones, and a social network with no members and one employee soars in the stock market. But why? Stick around. Tech News Today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, July 11th, 2014. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan. Jason is off this week. Alex Gumpel is filling in for him, and our co-anchor today is NPR tech and culture reporter Elise Hugh. Welcome, Elise Hugh, to Tech News Today. You're normally on Thursday, but this week you're on Friday.
Thanks, Mike, and it's great to be here on a special day of the week.
Now, I think, yes, well, whenever you're here, it's special, Elise, I got to say. Now, you write mostly about tech, but you also, as I mentioned, write about culture. And one really interesting cultural piece you wrote, I think was posted yesterday, was a fascinating piece about the difference between a burrito and a sandwich. Can you explain this?
Is a burrito a sandwich? So it sounds like it's a simple answer. Of course not, right? But in the state of New York, it turns out they categorize, for tax purposes, because sandwiches are taxed, they categorize burritos and hot dogs and pitas, all sorts of wraps, as sandwiches. And so this actually led to a really interesting question for us to look into, not just because of New York's case, but because all sorts of different jurisdictions think and categorize and classify sandwiches differently. And I was able to use this as a lens on regulation. And so, what's our definition of a sandwich can also be, the parallel for that is, what's our definition of broadcast TV, as we've seen in Aereo? What's our definition of all sorts of emerging technology or existing technology that's now being innovated in different ways? Regulation has traditionally struggled to keep up with it. And so it may sound like I'm just being silly with the burrito sandwiches thing. And plus, I like talking about burritos, let's face it. But there is sort of a bigger story there, too, about innovation and regulation.
Yeah, and the nexus between regulation and wording, nomenclature, is a major issue in the world of additives, and it's a health-related issue. I write a lot about food and health and technology. For just to give you one example, almost all cottage cheese in the United States and some ice cream and some other products have something in it called titanium dioxide, which is potentially harmful, especially in the manufacturing process. May or may not be harmful, but they don't have to list it as an ingredient because it's categorized as a manufacturing aid. So that little technicality enables people to sell products with titanium dioxide without putting it anywhere on the label. So what we call things is actually super important, and that was a really great story. I really enjoyed reading. In fact, I saw people chattering about it all day yesterday, and then it was just today that I found out it was your story. So great stuff.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, let's get into the tech news, and now I want a burrito. Great. Let's get right into the weird tech news. State-owned media in China today said Apple's iPhone is a threat to national security, and the reason is bizarre, too. A report by China Central Television, or CCTV, said that the iPhone's, quote, frequent locations feature meant that if someone accessed the location data of China's iPhone users, an entire country's economic situation and even state secrets could be revealed. At least I can't help but think that the Chinese government has it in for Apple. This is the latest in a series of attacks, I guess you will. And of course, the government often attacks whatever it is they want to attack through the state-controlled media, not just CCTV, but also the China's People's Daily newspaper, which has a circulation of I think 40 million or something like this. Absolutely enormous media outlets here, and they want to harm Apple somehow, and of course, iPhone being the golden goose of that company, they seem to be suggesting that something has to be done about the iPhone.
It wasn't long ago, Mike, that we were on this netcast talking about this cool war, the reemergence of a cool war, sort of a business related war that's kind of happening, even though we have geopolitical ties with China over our tech companies. And for example, Cisco is facing a lot of uphill battles in China, or getting kicked out in some cases. Microsoft also, too. Apparently, China, not too long ago, maybe just last month, China had said that Windows operating systems should not be on government computers there anymore. And Apple, especially being kind of our huge U.S. export, seems to be the next, or the ongoing casualty or loser in this in China. And that's huge for Apple's bottom line, of course, because of the potential market out there, and because iPhones are seen as such a luxury good for so many Chinese.
Yeah, and the Chinese government doesn't like certain things that the U.S. government does. One of them, of course, is spying by the NSA. Another one is accusations that China spies on the USA, and they don't like any of that stuff. But how do they apply pressure to the United States? One way to do that is through the actually influential organizations that do apply pressure, namely U.S. corporations. So I have the feeling that one of the reasons China does this is because they want to use a major U.S. brand to sort of put pressure on the United States to back off on China, so that sales or Apple's reputation within China isn't harmed. That's sort of one theory. Another theory is that, of course, China doesn't like it when you can communicate within China beyond the reach of the authorities' ability to monitor those communications. And Apple has super great security. If you've ever listened to Security Now, Steve Gibson talking about Apple's security for iMessage, it's top notch. It's almost impossible to crack, and even organizations like the NSA can't crack it. And China probably doesn't like the fact that Apple's becoming very popular within the country and enabling people to talk freely to each other. And finally, I think that Apple's success kind of hurts to a certain extent, the Chinese cell phone brands, which are very important and to the government. And of course, they have their own internal pressure points where these technology companies within China are influential on the government of China to a certain extent. So, I just think this is, but I do think it's bizarre that they would attack Apple and say that, if you can see where everybody is, you could get state secrets. You could tell where people are going. Where people are going.
Wouldn't that be true of? Yeah, wouldn't that be true of the location data sent by any smartphone, and including those made by Chinese manufacturers?
I would think so, and of course, I would think that the carriers would have the best.
If it were true, then yeah.
Yeah, I think the carriers would have the best access to that data, but it could be that because Apple is one company, it's a foreign company, and because it's secure, maybe Apple could somehow get that information. I don't know. Who knows? Their reasoning isn't particularly good. They use this. There's an academic that they use for some of these reports who toes the country's official line and comes out with these theories that are a little bit crazy. Still, it's an interesting thing. This was a major story on CCTV, and it means something in terms of Chinese policy, and it's not quite clear what it is yet. Of course, as I mentioned, this is the latest in a series of attacks on Apple. At the CCTV and also the China's People Daily newspaper attacked Apple last year for its policies around, they were claiming that Apple was singling out Chinese users for abuse in terms of the return policy and in terms of the warranty, when in fact it was identical internationally. Still, Tim Cook apologized. They made some changes, and now Chinese users are treated better than almost anybody else. But Apple's working hard to not be put in this position by the Chinese government where they're this pariah company or this company with a bad reputation. So we'll see where that goes. It's really kind of interesting. Well, Elise, it looks like the FTC is suing Amazon. Why are they doing that?
Yeah, let's switch over to the U.S. government, which is suing Amazon, saying that the online retailer allowed millions of dollars in unauthorized online purchases by children. These are in-app purchases. So this comes after Amazon refused a settlement that would have meant paying back some customers and changes to the App Store to prevent kids from accidentally buying things. And joining us to talk about this now is Cecilia Kang from the Washington Post, tech reporter, just kind of a few blocks down the street from me here in Washington. Cecilia, welcome.
Hi, Elise, down the street.
So how did all of this get started in the first place? Was it a band of mischievous toddlers? Bring us up to speed.
Well, Amazon, and I should say the owner of, just full disclosure, the owner of the Washington Post is Jeffrey Bezos, who is the CEO of Amazon. So I want to get that out in the beginning. So in case anybody is curious about the Washington Post and its affiliation. But to the news. So this has been an issue for a few years, actually, that the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has looked into, which is unauthorized purchases within mobile apps, and particularly within games. And the reason why this has become a problem, particularly with kids, is that oftentimes children are the ones who are buying things such as virtual goods, such as gold coins, acorns, that are often, they're make-believe. They're meant to help people, the children and players, either advance levels or enhance their game. But children, the FTC has stressed, often don't know that they're actually buying with real money these items. And the companies themselves make it too easy, is what the FTC is alleging. Amazon, they had a similar order against Apple a little while ago, earlier this year. And they make it too easy. In the past, they have made it too easy by allowing these purchases without a password. So that if you are, for example, playing Smurfville, you want to buy some mushrooms or Smurf berries, you can simply choose to buy them, and there's no pop-up that comes up on your phone and says, are you sure you want to buy this? You know, you need to put in your password. That's exactly what the FTC wants these companies to do. And in this case with Amazon, and this announcement with the lawsuit, Amazon, the FTC has found that Amazon has allowed millions of dollars, they're not being specific about how much money is involved here, that should be refunded by purchases that were made like these, called in-app purchases, by accident. And they say that Amazon has improved their policies, but that many people still should be refunded, and that the company should do a much better job of disclosing what exactly is going on with these purchases and do a better job with the password protections.
And Cecilia, the issue is being, as you mentioned, is one that involves Apple, Google, and Amazon. Apple was first on the chopping block, probably because they had the most complaints early on, and Google's one of the most recent. I mean, you know, I think that the FTC confronted Amazon recently, and Amazon said, "No, sue us." And now they're saying, okay, we're suing you.
Yeah, Amazon's response is interesting, that's
yes,
for sure.
It is, and they want this to go to court because they don't like the idea that they're just being regulated beyond the ability for them to defend themselves. Generally speaking, these technology giants' position is that, hey, we've already solved these problems. We're doing all kinds of, we're going above and beyond to make sure that this doesn't happen. And as I understand it, the FTC's position is, we don't care what you do. You can easily change back to any policy you want if you're unregulated. We want regulations on the books. Is that your understanding as well, that they just want to get this on the books no matter what the tech companies are actually doing?
Well, what the FTC certainly wants is to be able to put in some measures that ensure auditing of these companies on a yearly basis. Apple has agreed within their settlement for 20 years of an external monitor or auditor to come in to make sure that they are compliant. That's 20 years. That's, you know, that's a long time for somebody looking over your shoulder. And Apple also agreed to a monetary fine. They agreed to $32 million in refunds. The amounts that, and if any balance that is not claimed by consumers who want these refunds, would go to the FTC, actually. So Amazon's saying we don't want actually the fines, and we don't want to go through this process of being monitored, and we think that we're different and that we've improved. But you're right, Mike, that the FTC is saying, but we want to make sure we can't be so sure that the companies won't fall back on these promises and make it too easy for users. And I've got to say, I have two kids. They both are mobile users. One's a tween, one's an early elementary school kid. And I've been writing about this issue for about 3 years now. I first started seeing this on Apple in 2011 in their iOS store. And I had wrote about people who had found thousands of dollars in bills of unwanted charges on their iPhone bill, their iOS bill. And now that my kids are of age, the same thing has happened to me. I thought my kids didn't know my password. They do. They just watch behind my shoulder. And the next thing I know, I see my iOS bill. And I saw recently about $40. I asked Apple for a refund. I got it right away. So it's interesting. This issue really elicits such a huge public response. A lot of people who say, stupid parents who don't watch their kids. So you can call me stupid, but definitely I've been following this issue closely and writing about it. And it's happened to me too. It shows how easy it actually is. But it also shows that a lot of responsibility has to go on the shoulders of the parents and families to make sure that you're constantly changing your passwords and you're having the discussions with your kids about you're really not allowed to ever use my password on the iPad or the iPhone. So it's a really interesting public, an issue that's generated a lot of public interest because it is so a lot of people have experienced it. In the case of Amazon, the FTC does not know, as I said, exactly how much is involved here. They estimate millions of people, but they stressed in a call yesterday, millions of dollars worth of refunds that they think should be entitled to Amazon consumers. But they stressed in a call yesterday that as they go to court, they're going to look at the discovery process to figure out exactly how much money is involved here. $30 million to a company like Amazon or Apple is nominal. It's a rounding error when it comes to their balance sheets. But it's a these sorts of charges are really important pocketbook issues for families and households, and so that's why the FTC has decided to take it on. And I will mention that the FTC recently also charged T-Mobile with millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, they said, of unauthorized charges on cell phone bills. So they are trying to really, particularly in the mobile space, the mobile technology space, go after billing processes where they see fraud or deception or basically failure to properly disclose what's really going on between these often hard to read and understand bills.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that the FTC is concerned about is allowing companies, whether it's T-Mobile or any of these companies with app stores, to essentially allow something to happen that brings them revenue and income where they can blame it on others. In the case of Amazon, for example, blame it on the parents. In the case of T-Mobile, blame it on their partners who have these like kind of bogus, ringtone type of services that end up on their T-Mobile bills, sort of couched and masked. That was T-Mobile's whole response. Hey, it wasn't us. It was these other shady partners who we've already canceled our relationships with. So I think they want accountability, and of course they can really demand that because once kids are involved, everybody will get behind them on this. Cecilia Kang is at the washpost.com and on Twitter at Cecilia Kang. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cecilia.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, another way that children can get unauthorized goods from Amazon is by drone. At least that could happen in the future. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos was actually serious when he said he wanted to use drones to deliver packages. His company asked for permission today from the Federal Aviation Administration to test fast-flying drones that would deliver packages like a pizza in 30 minutes or less. Elise, this is, when this first came out, I was one of the sort of eye-rolling cynics who said, okay, this is just a really shameless publicity stunt to get everybody thinking about Amazon right before the holidays. That he went on 60 Minutes and said, hey, look at our drones. And, the 60 Minutes bought it hook, line, and sinker. Turns out he's really serious about this.
Yeah, I had the same response as you, Mike, at the time, because I used it as more evidence that 60 Minutes is really lowering its journalistic standards.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because it was during a time that 60 Minutes was already having kind of a bad spell. But yeah, it's really interesting. They're actually asking for it. This takes it beyond publicity stunt into a little bit more practical reality, but still. The FAA has been very slow to actually carve out their specific regulations on this. And they've said to us in my previous drone reporting and others that it was going to first put out kind of some draft proposals by a couple months from now, September, and then it's going to be another year or so until it's really clear which drones can fly, how this comes down for hobbyists, what it means for journalists, what it means for realtors who have also been using drones, movie makers, and agriculture. So there's so many questions still about the safety of this, privacy concerns of folks who don't want drones in their windows. you can assume that if they are shipping things to your house, they're coming very close to whatever's happening inside your house. So there's no doubt going to be the contingent of folks who are drone wary, who may not be fast adopters to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're watching the video version of the show, you just saw the official Amazon promotional video for this concept, where they show the incredibly unlikely scenario where the product is lifted off the assembly line, flies out this big open door of the Amazon warehouse, flies across an open field that happens to be between the factory and the home, lands in this upper middle class house in this open area where there are no phone lines, there's no kid with a BB gun, as Greg here mentioned before the show. No problems at all, just smooth sailing across that open field between you and Amazon. And so it's really kind of, I still am very skeptical about the feasibility of this anytime soon, although who knows what could happen in the future. Now, one of the interesting things about this story was the letter sent by Amazon specified some of the details of these drones. For example, they want permission to be able to test drones that can fly more than 50 miles an hour. That's faster than your average, camera drone that you can buy from Amazon, for example. It can hold 5 pounds of merchandise, and the letter specified that 86% of Amazon products weigh less than 5 pounds. They're really crunching the numbers here. The drones themselves would weigh no more than 55 pounds. So 55 pounds for a drone is, I guess, the upper limit that they're promising. That's pretty big and heavy. That sounds like a big drone. And they would fly no higher than 400 feet above the ground, which is the accepted standard for remote-controlled airplanes. Very fascinating, and this really sounds serious. Also, a couple of articles pointed out that Amazon has at least 6 job postings currently open on its careers website that are focused on developing what they're branding Prime Air, the drone, the Amazon's fleet of drones and their whole flight program. So. Sounds really serious, but I don't know about you, Elise, but I wouldn't expect anything to be flying to your porch within the next, 5 years? I don't think we're near making this happen.
Yeah, so let's bring our listeners and viewers to where things are now. Amazon's essentially asking to test these products, right? Essentially, nothing is actually being deployed into the air for real for a while.
That's right, and they promised that they would test everything on Amazon property, nowhere near airlines, nowhere over residential areas. This would all happen, I guess, in some open parking lot or something that Amazon owns. Again, they're looking to be one of the exemptions that the FAA promised to grant in 2012 for some unmanned aircraft. They've already granted a few, I believe, to oil companies in Alaska, and they haven't granted very many more than that. But it sounds like they're serious, and my guess is that they'll get an exemption for this because, I mean, come on. They can't just ban drones. You can't. I think it would be really unlikely for the FAA to just ban the testing of drones generally within the continental U.S. So, I'm not aware of any major company that's as serious as Amazon is about testing drones, and I think they're going to get their exemption. So.
Well, the FAA has been very conservative so far, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because they're basically saying anything that's flying in the air is under their jurisdiction, including things like bullets, right? If you want to take a really sort of all-encompassing read of what they say their jurisdiction is, so it'll be really interesting to see if they get their exemption. And as you know, it's not going to be very quick. This decision process seems to take a while for folks who have been requesting similar exemptions.
Absolutely. Well, we got a lot of weird stories today, folks. And the next one is the weirdest of them all. It turns out that there's a social network that is just on fire, has been on fire in the stock market, and it has 0 members. What's going on, Elise? Can you explain this story?
Yes, it's called Sync, or pronounced Sync. It's been traded under the ticker symbol CYNK, and the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, today actually halted trading on this purported social media marketplace. On a website, it is supposed to allow you to connect on social media with celebrities and business folks. And it has been the hot stock of the summer. Stocks have soared. Sync stocks have soared 30,000%, and earlier this week it was worth more than $5 billion. So that's
I don't think
worth
Apple
more than
has,
AOL or JetBlue, right?
I don't think even Apple has soared that much. I mean, it's incredible, and they have customers.
Right, and so Interestingly, the rub here is that this company may not exist. There's no record that it has any revenue or assets, which says a lot of things about kind of the tech bubble and what's going on here, or whether it's some sort of Jordan Belfort-like pump and dump boiler room situations going on. Somebody who's been doing a lot of comprehensive reporting on this is Business Insider reporter Myles Udland. Hi, Myles.
Hi, Elise. How are you?
So what is the deal with Sync? How did it become so valuable so fast?
Yeah, so it had been trading. So to go back, on June 17th, it hadn't traded for like 2 months or something. And then over the course of like 2 weeks, it went up to about $8, which, it's a huge rise in the over-the-counter unregulated market where this stock trades. It's not something that, has never happened before. But it takes a lot for people to notice. And then it got picked up by a couple different sites earlier in the week. And then I guess Wednesday afternoon when it closed at, I think, $14, $15, something like that. That was the 24,000% and change move, which, as you guys noted, Apple's up about 18,000% since it went public in 1980. And that happened in 16 trading sessions. So that's pretty outrageous. And the market that it trades on is unregulated, so it takes a lot for the SEC to step in there and to suspend trading in that, because when you list on the pink sheets, as it's typically called, you're not subject to the same rules as a company like Microsoft, Google, any of the big guys that you know about that trade on the NASDAQ or on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's a bizarre story, and when I started to look at its financials, I didn't really believe that it was what it said it was, if that makes sense. Like, it seems impossible that a company has no revenue, no assets, really no anything there. It has one employee. There was a clause in one of its SEC filings that it didn't have a contract with that employee. He's the only member of the board. He's the CFO. He was the treasurer. He's the president. He's all these things. So it really was, it was just kind of a bizarre story. And really no one knows what to make of it yet, because we can't get in touch with anybody at the company. Some people have talked to a former CEO of the company who was there when the company went public. And he kind of said, I don't know anything about it. I don't know who this guy is who runs the company currently. It's incorporated in Nevada. It has an office in Belize. There are just like so many things that are going on that really make no sense to myself or really to anybody else.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating story. By the way, are you in a ping pong tournament right now? I hear.
Yeah, there's ping pong going on.
All right, not a problem. Not a problem at all. There's a lot of back and forth questioning going on here as well. So, so I guess the big question is how, don't investors generally do a little bit of research about the stocks that they invest in? In other words, how can I get rich with a non-existent social network?
Yeah, so so I think someone on CNBC said this the other day. To call the people who are trading this thing investors is to use the term extremely loosely. Actually, I think that was Matt Levine at Bloomberg said that. And these are people who are trading these things, and they're just trying to get in, they're trying to get out, they're trying to make a profit. But there's very few actual shares trading hands. Yesterday, with all the coverage and with the huge rise in the stock, or the huge action in the stock yesterday, it was still only, I think, 250,000 shares traded, somewhere around there, which when you compare it to a huge company like Apple, Microsoft, again, those companies will trade millions of shares per day. So there's really no way that, someone is going to take Apple from, I guess, what it's about $100 now, take it to 150 and then back down in one day. That would just never happen. But with these smaller companies, when there's fewer shares trading hands, things go crazy, and the people trading it, they don't know anything about the company. They don't care. They're in it just kind of as a casino way to try and make money, try not to get caught out. And it's really a whole, different ball game than someone who's going to be owning a larger issue, or really investing in something for, a retirement fund or for something like that.
So, Myles, I've got to ask, what happens now that the SEC has suspended trading on Sync shares? What happens now to the folks who are holding stock valued at $15, $16 a share?
Yeah, well, good question. So it's suspended until July 24th. I don't think a lot of people really expect it to trade again. there's a couple of people that I've talked to out there in the market. Their suspicion is that it's got to be someone, either inside the company, associated with the company, or it's just a couple people who, are trading the shares back and forth between one another. So, I buy a bunch of shares at 10, I agree. $10, I agree to sell them to you at 11. You sell them back to me at 12. We split the difference or whatever. So, I think there's a lot of suspicion that something untoward is happening here. And
gee, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think, I don't want to speculate on exactly what happens next. But we know that at least for the next couple of weeks, the shares won't trade. And then, what the SEC does from there remains to be seen. But, here at Business Insider and at a couple other places, they've expressed kind of trouble getting in touch with anybody at the company. So, we'll see if the SEC has any more luck.
Well, it's been great ongoing coverage on your part. You can read Myles Udland at businessinsider.com, and you can find him on Twitter as well. I don't have his actual handle on the screen here, but you can see it on his lower third. There it is. It's M_Udland on Twitter. Well, thank you so much, Myles, for coming on Tech News Today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Elise, that's the Tech News Today. Another wacky episode. This was one of the craziest set of stories that I've seen on the show ever. We got Amazon delivering by drones. We got, kids being exploited, or their parents actually being exploited by their kids. Burritos. We got the burritos going on. Yeah, it's been a crazy show, but I want to thank you for coming on today. And so where can your legions of fans read your stuff and hear your radio work?
I am on NPR nationally on our show's Morning Edition and All Things Considered whenever I have something interesting to report on, but always online at Elise, WHO, Elise Who, a play on words, and at the NPR All Tech Considered blog.
Everybody, I want you to go follow Elise on Twitter. That's Elise, WHO, on Twitter. Let's see how many people we can add to her Twitter feed. Go right now and follow her on Twitter. Let's see what kind of a dent we can make in her Twitter following, which is already good, but let's see if we can crank it up. Elise, thank you so much. We'll see you next Thursday on Tech News Today.
Back on Thursdays next week. Thanks, Mike.
All right, looking forward to it. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, RSS, or many other options. Choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. You can follow us on Twitter as well. Our handle is Tech News Today TV. And please send us your thoughts and opinions. Send email to tnt@twit.tv or leave voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. I'm hosting tonight's episode, so don't miss that one. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Monday.